Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's start a whole new series here based on your suggestions. I'm probably going to do about maybe 5 or 6 videos in total and then give it another rest and then start working on some other stuff. This suggestion is actually one of the newer ones, just suggested this go around. I do recall it actually being suggested in the past as well. I just don't recall actually picking on it before and just didn't get around to it, but great time, great opportunity to be able to talk about it here. Yet again, it has to do with another encounter, in this case involving a small group of school children, much like the Voronezh alien encounter that I talked about earlier this year. And in this case, there are multiple drawings done by the children showcasing what they encountered. All very fascinating stuff. If maybe just one or two of them look similar, that would be just a coincidence. But in this case, all of them like looking very, very similar to one another, you can't just help but think that they truly did see what they saw there. So in this case, it is called the Ariel School Encounter, or the Ariel School UFO sighting. And let's go ahead and let's talk about all the information associated with this. So what was this Ariel School UFO encounter or UFO sighting? Well, it had to do with a situation back in 1994, so not too far back, just a little over 20 years or so, September 16th to be exact. It happened there at a place called Rura, Zimbabwe, which is about 20 miles away from the capital of Zimbabwe, and specifically it occurred at a school there called the Ariel School, hence the name of the situation being the Ariel School Encounter. Although 2 days before, about September 14th, people were stating that they were seeing these strange activities occurring up in the sky, something along the lines of let's say like these, I guess, weird pyrotechnics, whatever was the case, that was happening somewhere up in the sky. So it seems like that was a preview of some kind 2 days beforehand. It was considered a very exciting night because there was some, like, I don't know, the nights were very clear, very 100% scot-free in terms of clouds or anything blocking view. So people got to see, at least on September 14th, roughly around the 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock hour, these weird lights that were just playing around up towards the night sky, but most people didn't think much of it. 2 days later, though, this is where this encounter actually occurs. So yes, September 16th, 1994, early in the morning, a group of school children, around 60 or so, were on recess. They were out on the schoolyard of the school, just playing around with each other. It's a mixture, by the way, of various children. The way I was reading several articles, this is a school that has a mixture of different races. Like, there were black children there, there were white children there, I think there were also even some Asian children there. But yes, this was a good mixture of students, all in their one place, all unsupervised, because this was apparently their usual time period, this morning recess, to go play around. And they are the way that I was reading the articles, they usually make a lot of noise too when they're outside. So the fact that later on some of them will be screaming at the sight of seeing a UFO didn't really catch any of the parents or slash teachers' attention, because to them it was just the usual stuff. They just keep hearing these children screaming in the yards during playtime, so it didn't really wake their curiosity thereafter. But here's what occurred. They stated that in that time period in the morning, they saw these 3 objects in the sky first appear somewhere near their area. The way it was described was they looked like your average UFOs. I mean, they looked cylindrical, elongated. They had the ports, the little, what they windows, whatever is the case, those little black knobs that was associated with the usual stuff. Like you would think, if someone were to draw you, in this case a UFO, the first things that come to mind are the very standard type items. This is what they saw, in other words. And they noticed that these 3 objects, they would disappear and then reappear in different locations. I don't know if they disappeared, let's say, behind clouds, or if they disappeared behind some kind of other trees, whatever is the case. But eventually, one of them decided to break off and then come closer and closer to their area. And this was obviously like pretty fascinating, because here they are just wondering in amazement, what's going on, and then to see this thing just suddenly go straight towards them, you can just imagine some of them were probably giddy in delight, and the other ones were fearful at what was about to happen. They did notice this too, that this thing that broke off and just glided straight towards them, it passed some electrical towers, but was very careful about going parallel to them. Like, in other words, it wasn't dumb. Like, it didn't just blindly ram into those electrical towers and then face a huge fallout of electrical fallout from it. No, in this case, it made sure to clear those towers first, and then it landed close to them. The way it was described, it was about 100 meters or so from the students. It landed in an area that's normally off limits to them. Even though they could easily get to that location, it was still off limits to them, because that's an area where it was considered unsupervised. They could get lost. There could be snakes. There could be other dangerous wildlife out there. So that's why they normally didn't go to that area. But that's where this object landed. And it's still disputed to this day whether it actually landed, like let's say on the ground itself, or if it just continued to hover somewhere in slightly above the ground itself. This is because some of the children drew the drawings of the UFO landing, and then others hovering above it. Either way, though, all of them stated the next thing followed. Once it landed, something opened up within the top of the object, and then that's when a quote-unquote small man, about 1 meter in height, so probably about maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, came out. And the way they described him was he was a tiny man. They quoted him as being a little man. He had a scrawny neck, long black hair. In some of the pictures you'll see the distinction of that hair there. Huge eyes as well, much larger obviously than anything involving human eyes. Black eyes, it seems like, too, at least based on the way that they were drawing it. And it just decided to walk on its own across the ground from the UFO and then from the students. It seems like it was actually there observing the area, but at the same time not knowing that the students were about 100 meters away. But once this thing, whatever it was, this gray, this alien, whatever was the case, once it noticed the children nearby, then it became a little bit startled, and it vanished straight back into the UFO. Gave it a couple moments, and then that's when it reappeared back on the top of the object, but this time more towards the back area. This is also still disputed if it was this same little man or if it was another little man very similar looking. Either way, though, this next person, this next little man, came out and then started looking around towards that area. But eventually, the children, some of them who were very frightened by the encounter, started screaming and crying for help. Again, none of the adults nearby were privy to this screaming or like wanted to do something about it, because as I mentioned earlier, they were so used to the children screaming in playfulness throughout previous mornings that they didn't pay much attention to it. Some of the children actually did run away because they thought, and this is a nice little tie-in to some of the other cryptids I'll talk about, they thought that this little man was a Ticoloche. If you remember that creature that I mentioned in the past, that was a cryptid that appears and then is according to the legends, known to try to eat children. I'll include the link for it below too if you haven't had a chance to watch that video, but otherwise I highly recommend it. But yes, some of those children, in particular the African children, they immediately thought about the Ticoloche when they saw this little man, and so they decided to run away in complete fear. Some of the children even ran straight towards the nearest adult that they could find, and in this case it was a shop operator of some sort. She was there and she didn't quite believe obviously what was happening outside. I'm sure in her mind she was thinking, oh yeah, a UFO just landed, huh? Something along those lines. Either way though, she could not leave that area because she was manning the shop, and it had sensitive equipment around, it had money around as well, and she was the only person there, so she couldn't necessarily leave and all that stuff unattended. And in her mind, again, she's thinking these are just children, they're seeing something else completely different, not a UFO, they're just misinterpreting it. But either way though, though, after all of this little man, whoever it was, decided to go back into the UFO, and then it just took off, just shot off like most other UFOs, straight up into the sky, and then it disappeared outright. Never to be encountered again by the children, and seemingly never encountered again by anyone else within that area. Cut to the next day, and one of the most foremost UFO investigators there in Africa, a lady by the name of Cynthia Hind, who's deceased now, by the way, but she immediately heard about this case. She went over the very next day, and she contacted the headmaster of the school, and then she worked with the children as well. She's the one that had them draw all these pictures about what they had seen. She wanted to make sure that she could gather as much evidence as possible and see how much of it looks similar to what each one of them saw. And obviously she saw the patterns associated with the drawings. A lot of them had very similar objects in terms of the UFOs. A lot of them had very similar drawings in terms of this quote-unquote little man. And when she was interviewing the children, she found that some of them were like quite adamant. Like they were stating, one of them, girl said, "I swear by every hair on my head and the whole Bible that I am telling the truth." They wanted to make sure that they were not just going to be treated as little kids, even though they were little kids, but you know what I mean, like they didn't want to be treated as them making up some kind of story. No, in this case they wanted to be 100% adamant that truly the adults would believe them, and she believed them. In fact, one of the little girls became relieved once this lady Cynthia told her that she absolutely believes that she was telling the truth. But that's it. That's pretty much all the information tied to this very unique encounter. Oh yeah, one more thing. Apparently this creature, once it saw the students and I guess stared at them, whatever this gray alien was, it communicated with them, because some of them stated that there was this telepathic message that was sent from its mind up to theirs. Somehow it was telling them through their minds that it was sending a message that humans are out to destroy their own planet, they're polluting the environment, and if they don't do anything to stop it, then there's going to be dire consequences for the rest of the planet. In other words, the planet is going to be doomed by the humans' own activities, and that it was there to try to create some kind of message, some kind of warning related to that. But that's about the only thing really else that stands out with regards to this Ariel School UFO encounter. But again, that's it. That's all the info associated with it. Even 20 years later, to this day, people still go out there. They still interview some of those children who are now grown. You've seen some of the pictures of them from before. They're obviously now grown adults. And to this day, they still affirm 100% that yes, that they saw what they saw, they communicated with this being, whatever it was, and that they still told the truth. So quite interesting stuff. 20 years later, this is still as impactful as it was before. If anyone has any more information about this Ariel School UFO encounter, maybe something I missed that really stands out, please post those comments below. But isn't it interesting? You have a whole group of children, in this case 60 or so, that saw all this happen, and they provided so much clear evidence of it. It does make you wonder exactly what happened on that day. If only some other, I guess, adults could have seen him, someone maybe with cameras nearby. I mean, this is again in the 90s, so everybody would have had something, even disposable cameras, something along those lines. That would have been really great. That would have been probably the best footage yet when it comes to alien encounter. So alright everybody, thanks again as always, take care.